Welcome to Real World Real Estate, where we will explore, examine, and explain the real process of buying or selling real estate. Here is your host, Stephen Clyde.
Hey everybody, Stephen Clyde here with Team Clyde Realtors, RE/MAX Preferred, and welcome to a new episode of Real World Real Estate. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the pandemic and how it's affected the real estate business and what I'm going to now call the Great Migration. So this isn't the Europeans leaving Europe to come to America back at the turn of the century, or Americans heading west to find ground, or even the great savannas of Africa, where all the animals go on their great migrations. The 2020 pandemic has created a great migration in America. 8.9 million people have relocated since the beginning of the pandemic in March. Now, none of us knew what to expect in March when the news came out and we were closing down. I went through all different waves of fear, concern, and then being overwhelmed by the business part of it. But 2020 will go down in history for a pandemic that changed the world. No one would have ever imagined last year that we would stay home for social distancing in order to help save lives. Specifically, 1 in 3 adults substituted some or all of their typical in-person work for telecommuting compared to 1 in 20 adults that worked remotely before the pandemic. I mean, that's a huge difference, 1 in 3 versus 1 in 20. With virtual working at record high levels, people also decided to move for various reasons. Some of them needed to seek out bigger homes with bigger yards because they were, quarantined in their house and they needed to homeschool and they needed to work from home and their spouse or partner needed to work from home and then they needed a classroom space. So they obviously needed more living space than they ever needed before or they thought they would ever need. And then they also realized that, hey, I'm working virtual. I don't need to be within an hour of my office now. I can live wherever I want. I can live for quality of life and a better school system or a better neighborhood or more ground or less taxes. There were 1,000,001 reasons why people moved during this time frame. But there was affordability of homes in less dense areas. So leaving the city centers where the prices were astronomical just for rent and moving to the burbs so you could still get into work when you needed to go back in the future, but it provided you the space and the yard and the pool and everything to maintain your life during the pandemic. Virtual working is going to continue long after the pandemic. I think that's pretty obvious to everybody. It is obvious that for fewer people are moving for job-related reasons during the pandemic than they did before. You used to move to be close to work. You took a new job, you're working in Manhattan, you lived close to the trains, or you lived in the city so you could get back and forth to work. But that's all changed. What we found is, as of October, 8.93 million people relocated. This is an increase of nearly 94 people changing their address and their residence, compared to 8.84 in 2019 during the same period, March to October. Breaking down that data by month, most moves during the pandemic occurred in March, with 1.23 million people relocating compared to 1 million a year earlier. And then when we take that data and we dig into it and try to figure out where are these people going, is it just moving in the same area? But they need more space or they want a bigger yard or they want that pool or they needed the home office or they needed 2 home offices or 3 home offices. But what's amazing to me is the actual migration around the country. We're not talking relocating just from one development to another or from one town to another town. We're talking state to state relocations. And what's shocking to me as a proud Jersey boy, right, where I always preach that, I'm from New Jersey, only the strong survive. We're burdened with a lot of things in New Jersey. Bad roads, densely populated, high real estate prices, super high property taxes, right, the highest in the nation. So for years, we've been hearing of this mass exodus out of New Jersey. As soon as people get the opportunity to leave New Jersey, they do, and they go to less expensive states. They go to the Carolinas, they go to Florida, they go out west to Arizona or New Mexico. They're relocating everywhere. Some of them go up north to Vermont and New Hampshire. and they're trying to reduce expenses. What I found shocking when I was digging into this data is that New Jersey was the number one inbound state during the pandemic. Prior to that, we were the number one exodus state. You were leaving, right? What exit do you live on? That's a Jersey rule. I live at exit 4. Now that's not occurring, right? People are getting on, not getting off, right? It was New Jersey, South Carolina, and Maryland were the biggest winners with the highest migration gains across the country. Specifically in New Jersey, 2,031 more people moved into the state compared to those who left. In contrast, New York, Texas, and the District of Columbia were the states, well, District of Columbia is not really a state, but area, let's say, losing the most people during the pandemic. In New York, 2,847 more people moved out of the state compared to those that moved in. Right. So that's not a full year comparison, right? That's only a March to October comparison, but that's the height of the pandemic. For example, we know that Texas always draws more new residents to the state every year, but the period covered over several hot summer months where Texans may go elsewhere to escape the heat and therefore shows a net negative. What we saw, though, is in New Jersey specifically, and I'm going to talk about my market, we sensed this before this data came out. We felt it. We experienced it. In this respect, people were leaving the city centers. So of that net gain, that over 2,000 more people moved into the state than moved out, over 70% of that came from New York. So a large portion of that 2,800 people that left the state of New York more than half of them came to the state of New Jersey. Now, that was people leaving Manhattan or Brooklyn or Staten Island to get more space, and they were crossing the bridges and the tunnels and coming over to New Jersey, and they wanted a yard, and they wanted the home office, and they wanted a basement for more space, and they wanted a pool, and they were getting out of Dodge. We saw them coming down to the Jersey Shore, everywhere from Point Pleasant to the tip of Cape May. We've seen their normal commute, right? New Jersey always has commuters for New York, right? We are the suburb to Manhattan. We're the primary one, then Connecticut after that, then Long Island. But we saw that radius that people would move to, which was primarily in the north, right? Easy access to the regional rails into Manhattan, Union County, Essex County, northern part of the state. But now we're seeing them coming to the southern part of the state. Right. I just did a deal with someone who, was living in Long Island, worked in Staten Island, and is moving to Mercer County, New Jersey, about an hour and a half from his work. Now he's moving for quality of life, right? He can get more house for the money, he can get a bigger yard, he can get better schools than he could get up in New York. And this trend is continuing, right? We're seeing them come, 2 hours away from Manhattan because they only have to go on to work now, a couple times here and there. They're working virtual. We're seeing the same phenomenon coming out of Philadelphia. So a big portion of that net gain for New Jersey was coming out of Philly into the Jersey suburbs. And I've seen it, and I've worked on it personally with clients. So I had a client that was living in South Philly. They had a beautiful condo there. They decided to look during the pandemic for their shore home. We found them a great spot in Ocean City. Then they made the decision, well, we're going to make Ocean City our primary residence and just leave the condo in South Philly there for when we have to be in the city. That'll be our getaway place. The Jersey Shore is going to be our primary residence, again, because they know they're going to be working virtual. As long as they have easy access to the airport and everything, again, those drive times are out the window. What we used to do for radiuses that I have to be at work at this time, I don't want to drive more than this, those calculations are all thrown out the window completely. It's a really strange dynamic. It's changed things drastically. When we look at these numbers, we dig in. While Texas and New York had the highest moving rates, the numbers show us that these movers relocating during the pandemic, more than 50% of those that left New York, as I said earlier, went to New Jersey. Then they went to Connecticut. For Texas, they were vacating Texas, and 16% of them went to Arkansas, 13% went to Florida, and 9% went to New Mexico. So it's a really interesting dynamic. Large cities lost the most people during the first 7 months of the pandemic. Specifically, we see people moving out of some of the country's most popular areas and relocating to the burbs. This means that most people moved close to their home. For instance, most New Yorkers moved to Brooklyn, 33%, the Hamptons, Jersey City. Respectively, most San Franciscans moved to a county in a radius of less than 60 miles away from their previous home. So we're seeing a really interesting change, and this is going to change the country as a whole if this migration continues. Another really weird dynamic that we're seeing, and this one really caught me by surprise, in this hyper polarized, divided time that we live in. No matter what side you're on, it really doesn't matter. But we're seeing people relocate also for political reasons, right? So, we're seeing people that are, devout Republicans, and this is their core beliefs, leaving blue states to go to red states. And we're seeing, devout Democrats and their core beliefs leaving those red states and going to the blue states. So it's another twist that we're adding to this great migration. And this migration is going to continue. I really don't see it changing anytime soon, especially after listening to some of the reports recently that even with the vaccine and the rollouts of the vaccines, that best case scenario, we're looking at getting quasi back to normal in the fall of 2021. So if the government's telling us the fall, we also now know that that's probably the winter or the spring of 2022, right? Because the government never does everything on time. So this is going to continue, right? As people are still stuck in their homes, still working virtual, they're going to make these adjustments, right? I'm working with clients now that are looking for their vacation home, probably 10 to 15 years ahead of schedule for them. But if we go into another lockdown, if there's another new strain of this that we have to quarantine again, they want someplace to get away to, out of the cities, out of the densely populated areas, and someplace they can go and get some outdoor space and get some distance between them and their neighbors. How is the pandemic affecting you and your housing? I'd be curious to see your comments on this, because do you need more space, right? I've had clients this year that if I talked to them in 2018 or 2019, they still say this today. They were never going to move. They loved their home. They loved their neighborhood. They loved their neighbors. They weren't going anywhere. But pandemic came. Then we had to homeschool 2 kids, and we had 2 parents that had to simultaneously work from home. The one couple I'm thinking of here truly loved their home, did not want to move, would tell me continuously, we're not going anywhere. Well, 2 months into the pandemic, they called and said, we need more space, right? Because there's no place for us to work and the kids to go to school. We can't get away from each other. We're on top of each other. We need more space. Is that one thing that'll trigger you to move? People coming out of the city were, they were stuck in condos or apartments and nowhere to go, right? I mean, I had a backyard and a pool. So even during the summer, even though I couldn't go on vacation, I could staycation in my backyard. So are you moving to get outdoor space? Are you going to move to get more living space because you need those extra rooms? Are you going to move because with the new dynamics of working from home and homeschooling, a fully open floor plan is not conducive to those 2 things? We need separation of rooms. Is that a reason that's going to cause you to move? Or are you moving for philosophical beliefs and political beliefs? Are you going from blue to red or red to blue? Are you going to go where more people agree with you and you're not in the minority? So think about these things. These are truly unique migrations that are occurring. They've never occurred like this before. Obviously, we've never gone through something like this before. But I think the dynamics of it in the real estate market are very interesting. And when you dive into them, we'll be posting the stats and the entire article on this great migration to our Facebook page, which is at Team Clyde Realtors. So feel free to read through that, check out the stats. It's really, really some interesting things. If you asked me before this came out where New Jersey was going to rank, I would have thought we were going to be at the other end. We'd be like New York and Texas. not number one for positive migration in. So the way that order went, so it was New Jersey, South Carolina, Maryland, Iowa, Connecticut, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Ohio, and Mississippi. They had the most move-ins. The people with the most negative or the exits would be New York, Texas, District of Columbia, North Carolina. That's kind of a shocking one to me. California, not really. The high tax rates and people didn't need to pay the high prices of LA and San Francisco anymore. Pennsylvania fits for the same reason as New York. They were leaving the city. So they were getting out of Pittsburgh and going maybe to Ohio. They were getting out of Philly and coming to New Jersey. Illinois, I'm going to say it's the same thing with Chicago. Minnesota, I'm not sure. West Virginia, I'm not sure. But the one that really shocks me that had a negative migration, had more people leaving than coming in, was Florida. Because I would have bet money that Florida was going to be the other group, right? They would have the highest net migration in. They have low taxes. They have great weather. I can't fathom why that occurred for Florida, but they had a net negative. So they were an exit state, not an inbound state. So like I said, check it out. Take a look at it. When you look at you can go into the states and check your state. You can actually check your county if you want and see what your migrations look like. But I find it very interesting and very surprising for the most part. So, check this out. We'd like to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this? If you were going to migrate out and join this great migration, where would you go? And why would you go? Would it be for the space? Would it be for political reasons? Would it be for outdoor space? Would it be because you need more room? Let us know and comment on it. And check us out. Check out the article, which is on our Facebook page at Team Clyde Realtors. All right. I hope this was interesting to you. I found it extremely interesting. Have a great day. Stay safe. Practice social distancing. Wash your hands. Wear your mask. All right. And hopefully we'll be on the other end of this sooner than we think. All right. Take care. This is Stephen Clyde with Team Clyde Realtors at RE/MAX Preferred. Have a wonderful day.